It's Monday, the 13th of January, 2025. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories, 5 minutes. Let's go. Story number 1, the Aussie dollar has hit its lowest level since the COVID-19 pandemic, heading towards 61 US cents.
Sure is. Hit 61.38 cents on Friday. Now, in September last year, it peaked at more than 69 cents. That is a big drop in the past 4 months or so. It's also lower against the euro and against the yen, though nowhere near as much as it is against the US dollar. A lot of that is about the US dollar strength. The trade weighted index, which measures the local currency against the countries that we trade with, it fell below 60 last week. Now, it's done that a few times in the past few weeks. Apart from COVID and the GFC, that actually hasn't happened for a sustained period in about 20 years. Not good for holiday makers, obviously, especially those going to the US. The reason, well, inflation just looks a little better than we thought before everyone went on holidays before Christmas. More on that in a moment. Also, the outlook for commodities ain't so good. The Australian dollar depends on the price of things like coal and iron ore. Well, the outlook's not so good, so therefore the dollar weakens. At the end of the day, it's not all bad news. It's actually good for the economy. Imports become more expensive, which means we here in Australia buy local. Our exports are cheaper. So it's actually a boost for economic growth.
Sean, story number 2, that boost for economic growth could well work against the Reserve Bank of Australia cutting interest rates anytime soon.
Yeah, it sure could. Last week, the Australian Bureau of Statistics monthly consumer price index data came out. 2.3% was the headline number. Now, very low, but that reflects those energy rebates we've been talking about for a while. The underlying figure, which everyone's keeping a close eye on, just 3.2% in November, down from 3.5% in October. This is only a partial series. It only tells part of the story, but the trend is our friend in this case. Inflation is heading in the right direction. Now, that weaker Aussie dollar will give the Reserve Bank pause for thought because that does actually act as a stimulatory factor for the economy. Some very well-known economists, for example, the chief economist at ANZ, the chief economist at Macquarie, have come out in the last week or so and said, we reckon there'll be a rate cut next month in February. In fact, bond markets have ascribed a 72% chance of a rate cut next month.
Sean, story number 3, opposition leader Peter Dutton has outlined his vision for Australia. This was in a major speech yesterday where he said he'd focus on tax, migration and education.
Reckon there's an election coming up in May, Michael?
It does sound a little bit like that, doesn't it?
Mr. Dutton was speaking in Melbourne. That's significant because the coalition holds just 11 of 39 seats in Victoria. They want to win seats like Chisholm, Aston, Goldstein and McEwen around that Melbourne area. Peter Dutton, he said it's the last chance to reverse the economy and the social decline of Australia. He was very heavy on vision. He called it a sliding doors moment. He talked about views, values and visions of everyday Australians. He said Anthony Albanese was one of the weakest prime ministers ever. Kept going on about small government, using business to drive growth, lower and simpler taxes, families the mainstay of society, a nation living within its means, etc., etc. Policy? Not so much. Tax, migration, education? But we didn't get any policy details yesterday, Michael.
Story number 4, Sean, the local share market has started 2025, you've got to say reasonably well, although it's still quite away from the highs of early December last year, which was, face it, only about 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, back then it was 8,500 points. It fell to below 8,100 points just before Christmas. It's now around 8,300 points. In the first couple of weeks of 2025, the property companies have done best. That's on all that interest rate speculation. If rates fall, or people think rates are going to fall, that helps. That helps the property companies. Energy companies have also done well. That's on the back of higher prices. The financials and healthcare stocks, they've done pretty well. Back at rates, big winners last year. Be hard for them to keep that up this year. Overall, very difficult to have much confidence about 2025. So much going on. Trump, tariffs and policies. Will he start a tax war? Who knows? What's it mean for China? What's it mean for global trade? What's it mean for Australia? Lots of uncertainty, Michael.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, last one. Story number 5. Is actually about Donald Trump, Sean, because his influence is cutting a swathe through many companies, and this one is particularly interesting. Meta, owner of Facebook. This is extraordinary.
So Mark Zuckerberg has overhauled his free speech parameters at Meta. He's ended its fact-checking program. He said that Meta will now rely on community to flag misinformation, which is what X does. It's weakened its hate speech policies. Zuckerberg replaced its global policy chief, Nick Clegg, with a prominent Republican, a friend of Trump, a guy called Joel Kaplan. He appointed Dana White, who's the CEO of the UFC and a Trump confidant, to the board. Over the weekend, Meta dumped its diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. He appeared, Mark Zuckerberg, this is on Joe Rogan's podcast, saying corporates have become culturally neutered, that we need more masculine energy, and we need to celebrate aggression a bit more. Quite an immediate and remarkable response to the fact that Donald Trump takes office in a week.
Yeah, indeed. All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Monday, the 13th of January 2025. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 business news by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.